So this controller doesn't have any thumbsticks. It takes every input that you would find on a normal controller and turns them into buttons. We call these all button controllers or leverless controllers because it's an arcade stick without the stick. I have a lot of videos on these types of all button controllers or keyboard-like controllers. It's been quite the journey. I like to play a lot of 2D side scrollers and platformers, and a lot of these can get pretty hard, and I like having very precise inputs. I swore by D-pads for a long time, and now I've moved a lot of my gameplay over to these controllers. These types of controllers allow each finger to be on a dedicated directional input. It looks confusing, there's a lot of buttons here, but it's simple when you break it down. These are designed for fighting games, which are usually two-dimensional. So you have left, down, right, and these are positioned where they would be on a regular keyboard. So that is pretty intuitive. Your finger placement is the same that it would be on a regular keyboard. But then you have up, which is over here by the thumb. And that's a little weird. Well, that's because up is usually jump in fighting games. And on a keyboard, jump is usually space bar. So if you think about it like that, it starts to make a little bit more sense. For the buttons on the right side, you have the face buttons, which are laid out just like they would be on the front of a controller. And then you have the shoulder buttons, just kind of off to the side over here. I'm ignoring all these kidney bean buttons for now. Those are unusual. I'm ignoring them, and you should too. I personally don't really love these types of controllers for games that require the use of every button on here, because then it gets a little complicated and it's a lot to think about while you're playing. I prefer these for much simpler games, maybe games that only require 3 buttons on the right side. It can get pretty complicated to remember where every button is, so playing something like Mario feels pretty sick. You only need to remember where 3 buttons are. This is the 8bitdo arcade controller. It's the leverless variation of their arcade stick, which is also very, very good. But there are a lot of improvements here, the most important of which is how thin this thing is. Just look at that thinness. That is so much better. I purchased this when it came out about 2-ish months ago, but I never took it out of the box because of its one major flaw. These directional buttons only worked as D-pad inputs. Even the old arcade stick had a physical toggle, left stick, D-pad, and right stick. This is noticeably absent on this controller. D-pad inputs are usually fine in most fighting games, but the only fighting game that I play is Smash Brothers. And in Smash Brothers, the D-pad just taunts. So you can't play Smash Brothers with this controller. But just this past weekend, 8bitdo released an update allowing you to configure the buttons to work as a right stick or left stick input. Thank God. So now, I finally feel like I can give this thing a fair shake. And I'm glad that I did because I've been playing Silk Song, and that game very much benefits from having individual directional buttons for movement. I very much like what 8bitdo's done here. I think there's still a little ways to go with the software functionality. There's some relatively essential features that I'd like to see added, but I can't deny that they've done a fantastic job catering to the leverless crowd. And I think people who don't use all button controllers currently might find this to be a lot more intuitive and a lot more fun to use than they might think. This video is sponsored by Surfshark. Hey, what's up, man? Oh, hey. Bob, just moved here. So, where are you from? Long Island. Cool. Where were you, born? What? Like, what town were you born in? Saskatchewan. Cool, yeah. That didn't work. Give me another one. Try again. What, maybe you got it wrong. What town were you born in? VPNs can help encrypt your data so that nobody on your network can see what you're doing, whether you're on public Wi-Fi, at a coffee shop, or just at home. Not even your ISP can see what you're doing. VPNs like Surfshark can also change your location so that you can access content that's blocked in your country. Surfshark 1 gets you their VPN, private web search, data leak alerts, and their antivirus, which is also helpful for protecting you against vulnerability. Yeah, so my paternal mother's maiden name is actually Myers. Isn't that weird? What's yours? Your paternal mother's name? There's no risk to trying Surfshark, and they offer a free 30-day money-back guarantee. So give it a try at surfshark.com/den and use code DEN for an extra 4 months of Surfshark VPN. I just found this awesome article. What your first car says about you. Type the make, model, and year of your first car into the suspicious web form right here. I know what you're doing. What? Making friends? I will never like you. Sorry, that was mean. Go away, please. Got it. Got it. I'm out of here. So the old 8bitdo arcade stick that I have, I like very much, but it's been heavily modified. It's not stock at all. I have this one that's a little closer to stock. It's still got the stick on it. This one, it shocks you when you touch these buttons. Don't worry about it. I didn't like the stick, so I replaced it with this, which is a drop-in mod by Omni Arcade, and it makes the directional movements just like it would be on a keyboard, WASD. Also, the buttons that come stock are like arcade buttons. They feel exactly like Sanwa arcade buttons, but I want them to be more like keyboard keys. So inside of these buttons are keyboard switches on each one. This new controller doesn't need any of that because these buttons are already keyboard switches. They're low-profile white switches. They're also hot swappable, so you can replace them with linear switches if you want them to be a lot more quiet. Those are pretty easy to obtain and very easy to swap out. I happen to like the switches that are in this already. They're like perfectly clickable for me. And because arcade buttons are usually a lot deeper and thicker, it allows for this whole thing to be nice and low profile. They also claim that this thing has fingerprint-proof tempered glass on the front here. I don't know what fingerprint-proof means to them. Mine almost instantly got smudgy as hell. Right out of the box, the very first thing that you're going to want to do is update the thing. By the time you watch this, maybe the new ones will come updated already, but mine needed to be updated for both the Nintendo Switch 2 support and the whole left stick thing. This is an extremely easy process. Just download the Ultimate software from their website, plug in the controller, and start the update. But I would also recommend updating the dongle, which you'll need to insert into your computer at the same time. And while you're in the Ultimate software, you might as well make some minor changes to the button layout. I'd recommend doing this even if you're not going to play Smash Brothers. Just change all the directional buttons to be left stick inputs. There is really no reason not to have these buttons be stick inputs. I can't think of any game where it would be an issue that the only directional inputs that you have are a left stick versus a D-pad. Now that you've made this change, it will be saved to a profile. And to access that profile, you hit this yellow star button right here. So now I have a left stick applied, and if I press this again, it goes back to the default, and now I'm using the D-pad, I'm taunting again. This controller can be wired or wireless via Bluetooth, or wireless via dongle. I much prefer the dongle. 8bitdo has been doing this new fun thing where certain connection methods are locked behind certain connection modes. So, for example, we have switch mode and X input mode. You'll notice that switch mode only works via Bluetooth, and X input mode only works via 2.4 gigahertz connection. Both of them will work wired, but if you want to use the dongle, you're only going to be allowed to use X input mode, which will only work on your computer. Their older controllers let you use whatever connection mode and input method you wanted. You can go all willy-nilly with it. I played a whole session with the dongle plugged into the Switch, but all that does is like authenticate the connection to then use Bluetooth. It doesn't actually use the dongle on the Switch. It's just using the Bluetooth.
Although it does show up as a Pro Controller in Switch mode on the computer. So I guess that works for me.
It's just a little weird. One of my favorite things about this new controller and even the older arcade stick is the visual cue that you get when you switch between input modes. So right now we're in switch mode and you'll see the B button and the A button are over here. But if I go to X input, we got the A and B buttons switched and they're lit up. So I know what every button is. If I switch it back, now they're switched to the Nintendo mode. That's pretty cool. These light up labels are fixed, so you can't change them around in the Ultimate software and have them show up differently here. They are the way that they are. It's just the default layout. I think that's fine. I'm still avoiding talking about these kidney bean shaped buttons right here, and there's a reason for that. That's because they're largely unimportant, but we will get into it. I just want to get into playing some games right now because that's why most of you are here. Now, this is quite a bit of a different setup for most people who are used to actual controllers. Unfortunately, it's impossible to avoid a learning curve. I swear it's more intuitive than most people think for 2D games. But the learning curve still exists. It's extremely easy to get used to a game with very minimal inputs. I'd recommend picking a retro game or something like Mario Maker. Mario Maker only requires the use of these 3 face buttons, so your brain doesn't have to work too hard thinking about what to press. As for directional inputs, left, down, and right are very intuitive. It's just like using a keyboard. Up is a bit more of an issue. Luckily, there isn't much of a reason to press up in Mario games. Maybe for like a door or a weird warp pipe that's above you for some reason. So pressing up in a game like this is kind of a rare occurrence. So I actually think playing a game like Mario Maker or any retro game really is a great way to get yourself used to a layout like this. I have heard from some people that using a keyboard controller like this does remind people of using a keyboard like they may have back in the day to play games on an emulator. And some of those people use the arrow keys for directional movement, which is your right hand. That is an insane person thing to do. Don't do that. Smash Brothers is admittedly not the best use case for this controller. You're missing a right stick. Also, a lot of characters benefit from having an analog stick for certain moves. Some fighting game characters like Ryu, Terry, or Kazuya might actually play better with a fighting game controller like this one. Too bad I play Captain Falcon. He's not too bad without a stick, but it would still be nice to have a right stick for tilts. For Smash Brothers, a controller with even more buttons would be more beneficial. I have videos on the LBX and the Satisfy Glyph. Those controllers are purpose-built for Smash. There's also the Swirl controller from Junk Food Arcade that I just got, which you might notice solves a lot of the problems I've been complaining about. It even has 2 analog sticks for your thumbs. It's a lot more expensive of a controller, and I've been waiting for them to update this one too, so that I can use the keyboard keys as left stick inputs for Smash. Otherwise, you have to play the whole game with your thumb like this, and it's really not the best feeling. That update should be coming sometime this week, I think. Anyway, the longer you use a controller like this, the more you'll get used to it. I definitely did have my fair share of miss inputs with Smash when I first started using this thing, but I did eventually get used to it. I moved over to Silk Song, which feels amazing on a controller like this. I don't know how it would feel when I eventually unlock more moves that require the press of more buttons. I'm still pretty early game, so I only really press 4 face buttons. Having all the directional inputs split up is so great for absolutely nailing those platforming segments. I don't have to worry about rolling on the D-pad to nail those diagonal dives. I just nail them every time. It's sick. I will admit, though, that I often forgot about hitting the up button because it's all the way down here where my thumb is. So I found myself using up attacks way less with this controller, which is not necessarily a good thing. That's just something that I need to train my brain to fix. With time, I'm sure I'll get over that with this thing. Or I can just go back to using a controller with WASD inputs. There is kind of a solution to this with this current controller, and it involves these kidney bean buttons. This one in particular, right here. These kidney bean buttons are just remappable extra buttons. By default, they aren't mapped to anything. I personally found them mostly useless, except for this kidney bean button right here, the one that is directly above the down button.
Left, down, right. ASD, you know? The only difference is W, which is up. Oh, I can make this W. My whole world just changed. My whole world just turned around. Hold on.
This one can be remapped to just be the up button. So now you have directional inputs just like you would have on a keyboard. You have WASD right there. Problem solved. This, I think, is a great way to bridge that gap. If you're used to the WASD style layout, but want to get used to this all button layout eventually, this might be the best way to do that because you got the best of both worlds. You can just press both. How is that an A+? It's not necessarily the best solution for me personally, though, and that's because when I rest my hand on here, my fingers are a little spread out, and then the muscle memory kicks in. When I use an actual keyboard layout controller, you're a little closer together. My muscle memory is like, okay, this is a keyboard, up is over here. When my fingers are spread out like this, my muscle memory kicks in, and now I'm jumping with my thumb. The other reason that I don't love this method is because currently you can't map the kidney bean buttons to a left stick input. So it has to be D-pad up, which is fine for a game like Silk Song, but it's not fine for Smash Brothers. This just seems like an oversight in the software. I'm sure they'll address this in an update pretty soon. We only just recently got left stick inputs on the actual directional buttons. While we're at it, I would love 8bitdo, if you're listening out there, to have the option to have these kidney bean buttons be like a stick toggle. So what if I press P4 here and it switches the directional buttons to be a right stick input? Like a shift or a modifier key. There's stuff like that on some other Smash Brothers controllers. It would be cool to see here. Maybe you're playing a game with mostly left stick movements, but you want to access the D-pad to like look at your items in game or something, or I don't know, taunt on somebody. That would be great. Give us the option to toggle it with the kidney bean button. That would be cool. Right now, I have the two bottom kidney bean buttons capped off. The unit comes with 4 button caps. You can use them just to completely flatten out the buttons. So you remove them all together, basically. I did this for the bottom 2 so that they're out of the way. I think the real reason for all these extra buttons is to avoid copyright. Hitbox has a patent on a lot of all-button controller layouts, and they are very litigious about it. But they only seem to be going after small companies that can't afford long legal battles. Hey, why isn't PDP or Razer on your licensing program? What's that about? Why don't you go after those guys? What's stopping you from going after those guys? I'm not sure if just adding kidney bean buttons is enough to avoid copyright, but it could be a tactic. After all of these controllers are just boxes with buttons on them laid out in a way that perfectly form fit to a human hand. These layouts resemble arcade machines, which have been around for decades, and sometimes keyboards, which have also been around for decades. Even the WASD layout has been used for games for decades. I don't think the idea of these controllers is worthy of a copyright, but what do I know? I'm not a lawyer. I'm just a guy who benefits from having 10 different types of controllers that look like this. The major benefit of this 8bitdo arcade controller is that it's only $90. Use my affiliate link in the description. Thank you very much. $90 sounds like a lot for just a box with buttons, but this is actually the cheapest all-button controller that I've seen outside of AliExpress slop. I think the form factor here is absolutely perfect. It's wide enough to be comfortable and thin enough to be portable. The dongle is a huge plus. I'm not mad about these extra buttons. They're just an option. It's cool that they're there. The only thing holding this back from being my perfect arcade controller is just that I prefer that WASD layout. This top kidney bean button almost solves it for me. I'll still continue to play some games with it. I can get used to up being my thumb, but I don't really have to if I can just use this controller instead. But it is way heavier and bulkier. This new one just feels so much better. And don't forget, I heavily modded this old controller to get it the way that I want it to feel. This new one kind of just feels great to me right out of the box. If we're comparing stock experiences, this new one's light years better. It's way closer to what I want in a controller. And honestly, I think it'll get a wide audience way closer to that perfect all-button experience. That's the best part. I want more people to experience playing more games like this, not just high-level fighting games. If you don't need thumbsticks, playing games with this much tactility in some cases makes the games easier to control, and in most cases, makes the game way more fun to play. And I'm excited for more people to get to feel that. So what do you guys think about this new 8bitdo arcade controller? What use cases do you think you can get out of this thing? Or Did you not have any ideas beforehand, and now you're getting influenced? Leave it in the comments below, at me on Twitter, all this other social media garbage. Tonight, when I post this video, I will be playing Silk Song with this controller live on twitch.tv/Wulff. Then you can come and ask me questions in the chat. And the most important thing that you can do to help support this channel is just subscribe right here. If you want to see another video of mine, you should definitely subscribe. And share this video with a friend if you want, a friend who could use a little more tactility in their life. Thank you very much. Have yourself a very good week. You know those keyboard nerds that spend hundreds of dollars on their computer keyboards? They can transfer that over to gaming. All right, goodbye.